Ibrahim.
Hello.
And you know what I say? I've been saying Ibrahim. I don't know how you pronounce your name actually.
Yeah, Ibrahim.
I say it right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, good.
you got it right.
1 sec, I'll be right back.
Okay. The city has some kind of accountability to the community and not taking this opportunity to communicate with um, the community was surprising to me. Nevertheless, we're here. I want to remind each and all of us that we will do our best to avoid name calling, to avoid uh, talking directly to someone who is not here to respond and to talk about the project and let the community know what our concerns are about this project. So I, my name is Ibrahim Coulibaly. I am the CEO of Human Right Human Stories, and I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm glad to host this conversation. So, Zondie, if you can introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Zondie, she, her, and I'm just a organizer in the community and have worked with decreased homelessness specifically and and fair enough introduction. I will read the list of organizations who have signed on to this resistance, and it's not just a resistance, it's also a vision for something.
I'm Rico Perez, and I'm with Community Alliance of Lane County.
Okay, thank you. Zondie, what is 1059 Willamette project?
Yeah, sure. So the property at 1015 Willamette is the former Lane Community College building across from the bus station on Willamette, so in a very central location. And it was purchased from Lane Community College by the city, and they used community development block grant funding for that purchase, which means the building has to be eligible at least 61% units of what is developed there needs to be in qualified housing. So there's different tiers of that, but as they use those federal funds as a property, it has to have 50 at what are called affordable rates, but I think we can arrive at they're not as actually meaningful. And so we put out a request for proposals in November, and they got one response. Talk about what it means when you put out a request for proposals and you get response. And in any case, the response is from a development team called DeChase Mixes Edlin Limited Liability Corporation. And some of the mainers in that Limited Liability Corporation, Mark Mixis, and then they contract with architects Raoul Brokaw. Those three in particular, I think this is fair to say, it's factual, it can be fact checked. They are the same development team that looked to privatize Kesey Square, and some of the mainers looking to privatize the part of the riverfront steam, which involves big public subsidies. So these are somewhat familiar people to the city and also to the public. And in any case, what their proposal involves is a total of 129 units, 66 of which would be the so-called affordable units. 60 of those units would be studio apartments of those so-called affordable units. One would be a one-bedroom. And of those 65, the vast majority, I think all but 5, are under 400 square feet. Despite the split between 50% of the units being so-called affordable and 49% being market rate, actually 70% of the building, of the square footage, resident footage of the building is committed as the developers have proposed to actually the market rate housing. So I just think that's an interest. When we how the money actually plays out, it leans way more towards that investment in the market rate. And so in any case, propose the rent on these, on the income qualified units, they're called, to be $100 a month. And the, so we just have been saying just under 1,000. And that is considered affordable to making $39,100 a year. That will change, you know, presumably go up as in time. It's tied to anyone applying to rent those apartments can't make more than $39,200 a year. Now, if these were families, a family of 4 living on $39,000 a year is a much different level of stress than an individual. And these apartments are very studio apartments. We understand they're designed for individuals, and actually also can be checked. The proposal submitted by to change Mixis Edlin names young urban professionals as their expected renter pool. So I think that one thing, there are several aspects of the rents, but probably the most obvious is that we're talking about, oh, I talked about the subsidy aspect, so I can do that. But when we're about big public subsidies to, you know, traded in the name of affordable housing, and then we look at what that, and it's affordable to individuals, $9,200 a year, and needing a near $1,000 a month for students, that doesn't come anywhere close to affecting the people who are really struggling to keep housing or don't have housing at all. So that is, there's more detail here, but that's one bit of intro.
Okay, I missed part of what you said. How much is the rent for the studio?
$980 a month.
980. Okay, and to qualify, you have to make less than 39,000 a year.
Well, you can actually make $39,100.
39.
And so that actually an interesting aspect of this, which is of concern to me. I reviewed not only the request for proposals and the actual proposal, but also the packet that was prepared for our city council. So our city council finally are the people that are accountable to they're the only ones we elect. We influence by voting. We don't have any influence over the senator or city staff. So to me, when I see information presented to them by the city staff, and I understand that city councilors work part-time and they're paid only and they don't have staff that are, so doesn't have their own staff to say, hey, can you do this for me, do this for me? They all need to appeal to the staff. Then I think as residents of Eugene, we need to understand that the city council is subject to the information that is given to them by the staff. And so we have auditor, we don't have auditor. It kind of falls upon people, organizers like me, not, anyone who will spend the time to do it, to look at what's presented to them. And when I looked, and at some point I'd love to share how I act things, someone who wants to look at the documents. When I look at that, what is really striking, how much emphasis there is on in that packet prepared for council. So this is meant to read, to have all the information they need to make an decision about whether this is proper use of public subsidies, and do those being valued at $10 million. When you look at that, the document emphasizes that these units are affordable to people making 60 to 60% of the area median income. So that is simply not true. It's not true is that affordability is defined in a very standard way, which is that 1/3 of your income can be designated towards rent. And if you pay more than 1/3, are considered rent burden, and that unit you're renting is not actually affordable to you. You are stretched thin, etc. And so when the city starts talking about affordable to in households making 60 to 80% of AMI, there is a single unit in the proposal that is affordable to a household making 60% AMI, not a single unit affordable to a household making 65% AMI, not 70, 75. The absolute lowest it goes is 80%. Why is repeated several times in this that was presented to council. An emphasis is, for example, they say things like households that earn just over 60% AMI have a very hard time finding units they can afford in Eugene. That is irrelevant information, and it is leading information, because concern for people making 60% AMI there's no application here, because the lowest unit is $980 a month, which is affordable to households making 80% AMI. And if we were to understand the differences, it can be kind of abstract. What's the difference between 80% AMI, and that again is area median in 60% and 50%. Well, when we get to the 50% AMI level, we're actually demonstrate where the city had diagnosed that there's a true housing shortage. For units that rent between, I think it's 75 and something in the 1,200 range, so the $1,000 apartments are smack in the middle of that, the city actually has identified a 4,800 unit surplus of housing, whereas units that rent lower than $625 a month, they recognize, or less, they recognize a 13,500 unit deficit.
Wow.
So I think that's so important, because a lot of us get caught up in this idea of we need housing. Anything is good housing.
Zondie, I think we have technical issues. Can you turn your video off? Your, I don't signal. Yeah, can you try now to talk?
Oh.
We can hear you better.
Oh, because you couldn't hear me.
Part of it, yeah.
Okay, that's terrible. Is this better?
Yeah, this is better. So I have a question for Rico. Actually, Betsy wrote on the chat that SSI is $794 a month. How someone who live on the SSI would be able to afford a studio at $980 a month if they're making $794.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And you know, the problem here too for me, I was part of a crew that started the car camp back in the mid 80s that was at Autzen Stadium that Whitebird managed for a while. Fast forward 22 years into the future, it is 10 times worse now. The problem of homelessness is 10 times worse. And what's really ridiculous to me at this point, they're only thinking about a certain class. And it just smacks of classism to me when you're only targeting a certain class and not even thinking about what is lower than that particular class. So that's where my interest comes in. The other part of this is these subsidies that are, I mean, $10 million in subsidies ending up on the back of, you know, Eugene taxpayers. That's ridiculous. What in the hell are these people thinking that, you know, it seems to go right past their heads that they have thousands of people that are homeless on the street right now. Affordable housing should be a #1 priority. I think they, you know, my good friend Marion had mentioned something about if they took an avenue of going in the model of what St. Vinny or Shelter Care are doing, then I think we'd be talking a little different conversation here. We're not, what they're doing is nothing about community. It's about money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Zondie, who decide how much would be the rent in this process?
Oh, sorry. How much will be the rent?
Yeah, the rent. Like the 980. Who?
Oh, who decides that?
Yeah.
So basically,
the developer.
can you hear me, or I'll turn my video off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the developers, basically what they did is they chose the maximum that could be, basically, if they didn't set it at 80%, they wouldn't qualify because these community development block grant funds purchased the property. Actually, the proposal, the request for proposal specified that the maximum rent put out by the city specified that the maximum rent could be 60% of AMI, which would be in about the about $730 per month range. And these developers are claiming that they would need another $2 million in subsidy in order to have rents at that level. And so I think it's actually really important to understand how that's called not penciling out. The phrase for that is the project won't pencil out. And how that gets constructed, I think, is really important to understand. I'm just going to check that you can hear me so I don't talk for too long with no one. You can understand me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So that is not tied to labor costs or material costs or any of that. What that is tied to is the amount that they have told investors they can expect as returns. And so actually this project has a 10-year projected internal rate of return at 12%. So that's separate from what the developers are pocketing off the bat. That's separate from $6 million in quote unquote development costs. So that's not a shabby return at all. The idea is that the particular investors they're lining up will simply not put their money in the project if they can't get, some maximum threshold. They could invest it in anything else, and they won't do it unless they can get this. So when we play into that model, and I think it speaks to one of the demands that is in the letter, or one of what is being asked for in the letter, which is community land trust housing, or simply a different economic model by which public land and resources cannot be cornered by, frankly, a high capitalist model where they can just keep saying it won't pencil out. We need to get this much, this much, this much. It's actually a race. It's would the phrase be a race to the bottom, where they can, the more they make in every city, the more they are able to corner us, the more they can come back and say, oh, we can't do it because we could make more. You see, so it's just, we cannot let essential infrastructure such as affordable housing be, and major, $10 million in public giveaways be subject to people who want to make maximum profits. So that's why we look for a different economic model. I mean, that's one of the reasons we look for a different economic model.
Okay, thank you. Rico, what do you see at this moment, or Zondie, what do you see that could still be done? Is this a done deal?
Is it a done deal?
Yeah.
Well,
No, it's not.
we're going to find out about that. I mean, look, today, the property over by the Maury Jacobs Park, they went in there and started taking trees down. And they're going to take a whole bunch more to put in an apartment complex that is at market rate. That's not affordable housing. You understand? That has nothing market there. Again, I can't help to think that I don't understand well, I understand it, but classism is like an evil, man. In my opinion, right up there with racism and every other ism that we're talking about. We were supposed to have a conversation, and I asked for another meeting, and hopefully we're going to find out. This should not be a done deal, but if it is, one word comes to mind: protest.
Zondie, what could be done?
I'll turn my video off when I talk. So I don't think, I have to resist the idea that it's a done deal, because if it's a done deal, we don't even have a charade of democracy. I mean, this is supposed to be voted on by council members who are listening to their constituents. So I hear you that, I mean, unfortunately, I had a council member say to me that this was a done deal before the process started. So that is very concerning. But I'm just going to take a leap of faith and assume we have some shred of the democratic process actually in play here, and say this is going to, no action is going to be taken on this before June 9th, when the council will meet. And so there is plenty of time for us to have our voices be heard. That the city withdrew from this conversation is not a good sign. So we may just have to up our form of communication. But in terms of what can be done, what is the feasibility of building housing that doesn't rely on these massive giveaways to developers who say, you know what, it simply can't be done, at any better than $980 per unit per month? Well, we have provided the city with something that's called a program manual for municipalities and community land trusts. There are many manuals, documents, precedents along these lines. And in fact, these are, the land trust model, which is not the only model. I mean, first of all, it's not the only model, but there has been such an increase in municipally initiated community land trusts precisely for this reason, because what has gotten us in this crisis is all the disinvestment in direct public housing over the last 45 years, and basically tax incentives to high-end capitalists that is supposed to replace what was public housing, and yet leads to these local level negotiations where they just say, we can't build it, and they raise the threshold to raise their profits. And so a community land trust model is I want to say it's absolutely possible, because there's no reason it shouldn't be. But if we want, I'm willing to be more moderate and say, okay, city, take 6 months, provide, invest. You don't even have to do this. You could just encourage. There's other ways to encourage community land trust developer and cooperative housing developer to come forward. But what some cities do is they say, hey, we're going to commit $25,000. We would like, we're soliciting organizations that would like to take this on, meaning take on just the research. What's the feasibility here? Who could be key players here within the community, or they hire outside consultants. So Portland has done it. They can hire consultants from Portland. Come talk to us. How does this make it more affordable? How does this keep the $10 million dollar subsidy and land subsidy from expiring in value in 35 years, so that it's permanently of value, right? Yeah. I mean, the truth is, if anyone's asked someone who owns a home to take this deal on their own home, they said, oh, you know what, you have daughters, you want to house your daughters for 20 years. Okay, we'll give slightly cheap rents, and then we own the house. Your daughter's this age, okay, she can live here for the next 12 years, and we're not going to charge her too much for those 12 years, and then we own your house. Nobody would do it. Not a single counselor would do it. No one would do it. But yet, this is what's proposed.
Well, if you put it that way, it's gonna make it obvious that it seems like it's not a good deal.
One thing I want to point out is the request to talk to Cornerstone, which is a nonprofit organization. They act like they don't know that this nonprofit is in bed with a big money construction company. I don't know why they want us to talk to Cornerstone. Let's talk to the contractor. That's, I'm suspect here about this whole deal. And mostly because it ends up on the back of the taxpayers. Yeah. And what? You think we're not taxed enough, or what?
So moving forward, what do you see as being effective steps that could be taken? What would you encourage people to do to ask for more accountability, at least more clarity, and more discussion around this project than letting the ball roll as it is set to be?
If we have until June, whatever, I'd say start writing your city council, start writing Mayor Venice, start writing everybody, and do it in mass, because this is crazy wrong, absolutely wrong.
Christine is asking if there has been a public hearing on this project.
I don't believe that they have public hearings because it's not an ordinance. I could be mistaken about that. People have spoken it, and not this coming, but the following Monday will be a chance to on this at public. So that's, you need to really sign up by 17, and it's from 7:30 on Monday night, not this coming, the following one. There was opportunity to provide public feedback, which a number of people did, and meaning to submit it to the staff person who was compiling public feedback. And you can sort of see how that sorts between downtown stakeholders. They're so-called downtown owners is really what it is. Because of course, it's sort of like a NIMBYism. You don't, if you a low income building in your neighborhood, well, then that could lower your property values. If you have an upscale building, it raises them. So but yes, you can speak, not this Monday, but next Monday. You can email your counselors individually, you can call them, and you can tell the group of them, and you can be in touch with, because I think we're going to be organizing more of a resistance, and so it would be great to be in touch with any of you.
Thank you. Heather Siliki is here, and I know Heather is a great advocate for low-income housing. I'm gonna ask Heather to unmute herself if she wishes to. Hello, Heather. Heather? She's probably not ready to talk yet. But hello. So Rico, what do you think the civil rights organizations here in town can do um, to have the city to at least consider uh, uh, um, pushing this project a little not the timeline of the project, kind of changing the timeline of the project to have more feedback from the community.
Well, I think what Zondie did was unite 25 groups together. And that's the biggest start right there. And if all 25 representatives of those groups join together and speak together, perhaps we can, make an effective change. We absolutely do need to unite and to try to find ways to get affordable housing, get them to understand that we need that, not this market rate. There's just, the other part that's bothering me, what happens here when the moratorium ends? And let me just tell you, my landlord said he had a stack this big. What do you think everybody else has? How many people do you think will be out of a place to live in this situation that we've been in for the last year and a half? So why is it always about money? We definitely need to stand together and be one voice. Definitely.
So we have a hand up. I'm going to ask the panel if you want to hear from that person before I proceed. Oh, the person lowered their hand anyway. It was Eric Jackson. Or we can continue the discussion. I hope people will have the opportunity to sign up for public comment on two Mondays from now, and attend the city council meeting and make their voice heard. And what I want us to maybe close is, do we have a model? I know you talked about Portland, about the community land trust, but do we have a model that could serve better, or that could be better suited for people who have 60% or below AMI, who make 60% or below?
So I want to say that actually, if this property were, I'll turn my video off. Sorry, I want to say that actually it was another misleading bit of information that was given to council. What they wrote is that this property is not, they wrote 1059 Willamette is not eligible for home, capital HOME, federal funding. And so I followed up with staff, and because I did not think that was true. And what they meant was, if we accept this proposal, it would not be eligible for home funding. But if it were at 60% AMI or less, it would be. Okay, so first of all, there is, I mean, I want to sort of pair that answer with something else, which is that there are some of the other demands in the letter that organizations signed on to, one of which is for, it's sort of put two ways, pro BIPOC, pro disabled, pro poor, pro houseless, etc. covenants, pro trans covenants, or anti-racist, anti-discriminatory policies. And this is not something that I think we can, just pass over. This is very real. I mean, I have to say, because, probably because of my ancestry, I co-own a home, and we have had many houseless people sleep on our property. It's something like 70% have been Black. That is so discouraging to me. Okay. And when we look at, we know that Eugene was built on Indigenous dispossession, and we know it was also built on Black exclusion. And, I've just actually been reading about Ferry Street Village, where that was, basically Alton Baker Park, where because of redlining, or actually straight up exclusion laws, Black people were on the north side of the river. They were given 10 days notice and told by the Lane County an ordinance that said anyone who is still there can be evicted by all means necessary. It didn't even say any means necessary, all means necessary. And so if we consider that history and actually what is happening, I cannot separate what is happening with this 1059 public subsidy to white cis men who have gross access to capital because of the history of dispossession and exploitation are light terms for it, right? So it's, Eugene is engaged in a process in further perpetuations of white supremacy, where they are excluding poor people from the center. They are doing nothing to rectify the historical exclusions, right? I mean, if Alton Baker Park were still a Black community, hey, they'd have a pretty good stronghold in Eugene. The value of that property that they owned would be on the, it's pretty nice spot, right? But we don't have that. And we have these same white cis men corporation looking to be given the land directly across from where Ferry Street Village was. So plus millions of dollars thrown in. I mean, these things are, they're no joke. And I am tired of seeing people like traumatized, and then we have, I want to say one more thing. Both city manager Sarah Maderi and Lucy Vinnies keep promoting this book called Upstream as their model for the economic development and that they're doing in Eugene. However, it's not at all. I mean, upstream, what the thesis of the authors is that you address root problems. So we have seen them invest in expanding, super funding the police budget, which through the payroll tax. Policing is a completely, it's the epitome of a downstream solution, right? It's the epitome of a downstream solution where you're just relying on punitive enforcement rather than actually getting at root causes. And when we are putting money there and not to housing, or when we're investing money in further inequities, which is what the 1059 Willamette project does, both in giving all this profit to, you know, a few white cis men and their investors, and saying, hey, we're going to subsidize rents for individuals making $39,200 a year. It makes me sick. I want to just quote something that is so stunning to me. So I said same development team, or their partial same development team for the people who are now preying on the, you know, trying to get the free land and free asset at the riverfront. So their vision for redeveloping the steam plant, you, again, I will tell you where you can fact check this, so I'm not just quoting someone who's not here, but Mark Frohnmeyer in the last presentation to council on the steam plant said that the steam plant would be a place, and here's where part of the quote comes in, where tech transplants from the Bay Area can build community. Okay, so when I went to the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls event by the river, and I biked there, I biked past the steam plant, I went to the river, or went to the event, see red dresses hanging in the trees, hear the people say, you know what, one day a year we bring up the murder, one day a year. And then I bike back by that river plant, and I hear about building community for techie transplants from the Bay Area. I can't stomach it, right? That is not right. So, yeah.
What's the percentage of the payroll tax that's going to affordable housing or any means to fight homelessness in the city?
I couldn't actually hear you, Ibrahim.
I'm talking about the payroll tax. What's the percentage of the payroll tax that's going toward affordable housing or any kind of means to alleviate homelessness in the city?
So the city, as it's currently earmarked, the tax, the current designations that.
Can you turn your video off?
Oh yeah, sorry, just remembered. Sorry, the current designations that they have for the payroll tax are 65% to expanding the police, 15% to cops, prosecutors, and jail beds, 10% to fire and emergency services, 7% to homelessness prevention, and 3% to literacy projects, which sometimes also gets kind of couched in with homelessness prevention. The idea is if there's more literacy, there'll be less homelessness. So, you know, 7%, maybe 10%, that is a perfect inversion of what they heard from the public. They were polled in 2018. What is your primary concern? What's your front of mind concern? The largest single category of response was 40% of respondents said homelessness. The next largest category of response was 7%, and it was traffic congestion. Only 4% of respondents identified safety as a concern. And yet we see 65% and another 15% going to the criminal punishment system, and then 7% to homelessness. So, you know, that's all I can, you know.
Wow. Okay, Rico, you have anything to add?
No, I think we've covered all of it. let's just hope that everybody jumps in and support Zondie's efforts here. This has gone too far with what the city's doing. Look at the River Road here over by Dairy Mart. The gigantic apartment buildings they're putting over there. You think those are going to be affordable housing? I don't think so. Just like the other ones across the street, the other ones up the street from you. So
Yeah. Yes, and Heather has a nice question here. Good question. How do organizations can sign on? So Zondie, if we can give an email or a contact for organization or individual actually who want to support this effort to contact you.
the more the merrier.
Yeah. So it's zondiefree@gmail.com. ZONDIEFREE@gmail.com. Because we are live on Facebook, so some people may not see the email address. And or you can call at 650-743-8588. 650-743-8588. Before I let Zondie conclude, I want to remind at least inform you that on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, I will be meeting with Ibrahim, that also some of you know as Ib Soraya. Ib is a prohibited activist in town. He was born in Palestine. He lives in Eugene here for a long time. He will be having a conversation with Daniel Borson. Daniel is a human rights activist. He's Jewish. And I will be facilitating that conversation. We want to talk about what's going on in Israel right now from their perspective, so people can understand, because the problem there is so complex that a lot of us do not have the keys to read what's going on. I also want to say that if the city and or the developer want to use this same platform, we have an open door policy. They can contact me, and I will give them the opportunity to come and give their side of the story of, tell us what's going on that we may be missing. With that, Zondie, you have the last word.
Okay. I'll turn my video off. I want to say that definitely I have not put this together alone. As I said, I've worked with organizers in decriminalized homelessness, but also the calls, the basic calls are all generated both broadly and within the community. So for example, the call for community land trust housing, that was actually presented to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee. The idea, actually, what was presented there was that there would be at least affordable housing trust funds would go to BIPOC controlled land and housing acquisition, proportionate to the percentage of BIPOC people in the population. And they apparently have met some resistance to even just that level. I mean, there's nothing in the realm of reparations or anything there. It's just equal. And then, of course, there are calls for land back, and there are calls for reallocating funds away from policing and towards essential infrastructure. And so there are many voices in the community, and I don't know if Erica Lincongo is still here, but Erica is always elucidating to me And so I just want to be sure that, you know, if I'm somewhat okay with a public face on things. And so that's why you see me. But it's certainly not me alone. And then absolutely the support of all the organizations. We definitely wouldn't be here if all these organizations or even, you know, the first few I really appreciate.
I wanted, since Erica is here, if Erica wanted to say something, I allow her to unmute herself. But there's a question here on the chat for you, Zondie. It is about the survey you mentioned where only, 4% was supporting safety, say 40% was homelessness, and I can't remember the numbers, but that was the survey. I mean, she's asking where, I think it's she, at least they're asking where they can find those numbers.
The best way to find those, I will tell you a long and short answer. If you want to, I'm not seeing the question, but if you want to email me or call me or text me, then I can get it to you. It's a little bit where they are. They were presented by a man named Dr. Gary Mann Ross to the city council. This taxpayers basically hired, I think they're called Strategic Research Institute is what they're called, to get community feedback on these things as they were putting together what they just call the Public Safety Initiative or Community Safety Initiative. And so he presented the findings at the city council meeting. And so, and they generally do that showing slides. And so I have screenshotted the slides of that presentation, but I can refer you to, I don't have in my head exactly.
Someone shared it on I think it's Julie. Julie shared the link to it, the 84 pages on the report. So it's on the chart. And Christine also says she would email the information. So thank you all. Thank you for joining us. This gonna be we are trying at Human Stories to have regular community conversations around issues. This is the first one, but we will be having multiple. And you can contact me through Facebook at Human Stories, or through email is CEO at humanstories, and one word.com. .org, sorry. It's CEO at humanstories.org. And we will be having regular conversation. Again, if you know the developer, or you know someone at Cornerstone, or you know staff, or a counselor who watch this and want to have a public meeting about it, we are open to it. We will always offer the platform. Yes, Zondie?
I would just like to make a plug that if that were to happen, or just in general, to include members of the public, or way when there are people who have a platform and people who don't. And so they have their platforms, they have, you know, I worry because a lot of time, for example, I just the budget committee yesterday say the steam plant building is valued at -$8. I'm not going to do it here, but I can break down how that is a rigged figure. But if people hear that, they say, "I sent someone to take that property off our hands." So I just get concerned if they're if aren't alert to how of a platform they have, how much vigilance we need when we see that there are that don't add up in terms of our government represent people's interests. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There you
thank you all. I appreciate all you do. I appreciate all the attendees. Keep the good fight, and I will encourage our viewers on Facebook and those who would watch this video on YouTube later or on Facebook. Please get engaged. Reach out to the city, ask questions, and ask for accountability. We're using taxpayers' money and we pay taxes. Let's make sure that the money we're giving to the city is being used, to the benefit of the community. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the week, and see you on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Thank
All
you.
right.